Hello, and welcome to myexcelonline.com. Today, we are going to give an introduction to Microsoft Excel. For our demonstration, we will be using Excel from Office 365. Let me give you an outline of the material we will cover today, and I will show you that outline in my Excel spreadsheet. For our first topic today, we are going to cover what is Microsoft Excel. Next, we will cover some of the definitions that are related to Excel so that you can understand some spreadsheet lingo. After that, we will cover some ways of getting around and navigating. Then we will go over some ways to enter data. Next, we will review some formulas that are commonly used in Microsoft Excel. After that, we will cover some of the more common ways of formatting data inside Excel. Then we will cover some of the tabs across the top so that you can see some more of the functionality available to you. And finally, we will review the File tab, where you can access some important functions such as saving files, printing, and exiting Microsoft Excel. So first, let's cover what is Excel. Excel is a program created by Microsoft in order to create spreadsheets. Well, what is a spreadsheet? A spreadsheet is a way to organize, analyze, and store data in a table format. To start Excel, you will first need to install Microsoft Office. If you have not done that yet, please pause the video and come back. If you have installed Office, look down here on the taskbar for a green icon with an X. If you do not have this icon available on your taskbar, then go to the Start button and scroll to the E's, and you'll be able to click on the icon from here. Either place will get you into Excel. Upon opening Excel, you will see several options in this window. Let me go over a few that you will commonly use. The first one is this Recent menu down here. These are a lot of the spreadsheets that you have probably opened in the last day or week. This Pin tab right here lets you go to some of your favorite spreadsheets. It's kind of like your favorites when you're using internet browser. Another option you have on the screen is to go to More Templates. A template is a spreadsheet that Excel has already created for you for various purposes. Let me give you some examples. Here's a calendar that you could use. Here's a weekly chore chart for your kids. Here's a household monthly budget to keep track of the money that you spend every month. Here's a schedule for students. Here's a simple invoice that you can send to some of your customers if you have them. But for our purposes today, we are going to scroll up to the top and create a blank workbook. Next, let's cover some of those definitions and terms that people use when they are talking about Excel. Similar to your body, the basic building block of a spreadsheet is called a cell. If you would like to know what a cell is, just look at one of these rectangles. I've clicked on another and another. Can you follow the moving rectangle? Each one of those is called a cell. Every spreadsheet is made up of many cells. In order to understand the name of a cell, you must first know two more terms, a column and a row. A column is vertical and goes across the top. Right now I've clicked on column A. This is column L. This is column W. If I keep scrolling to the right, I get more and more columns. Here is Z, and then after Z, it changes to AA, AB, and so on. And columns keep going all the way to the right until you reach about 16,000 of them. The next term you need to know is a row. I've clicked on a row right here. This is row 1. And now I've clicked on row 20 and row 27. And if I scroll down further, you'll see many, many more rows, and those will keep going on and on until you reach over 1 million. A cell, therefore, is the intersection between a column and a row. So in this case, right here, and this row right here, you would have D5. If you've ever played the game Battleship, a cell is very similar to the kind of coordinates you would have in that game. If you ever click somewhere and you want to know what cell you're in, like here, you can find this out in one of two ways. First, you can go to the top left and see the K12, or you can just look and see that the K has been grayed out and the 12 has been grayed out, and you can tell where you are in the spreadsheet. So that's what a cell is. An entire group of cells on one page like I'm looking at, so I'm scrolling all the way down and all the way over. That is called a spreadsheet. I can add more than one spreadsheet. Right now I have sheet 1, but if I click this plus button here, I will get sheet 2 and then sheet 3. So I can have multiple spreadsheets in a file. Say I have more than 3 sheets open here, and it's difficult to navigate between them because you really only have this much space to see the labels of your sheets. If you right-click on one of these 2 arrows, you will see all the sheets in your workbook, and you can click on any one of them and go directly there. When I go to save this file and I'm saving together multiple spreadsheets, that is called a workbook. However, sometimes a workbook is made up of just a single sheet. So going from large to small, a workbook is made up of one or more spreadsheets, and a spreadsheet is made up of a group of cells. I'd like to give you a few more definitions for terms that are commonly used in Excel to manipulate your cells and your spreadsheets. Look across the top of the screen. You will see some words like home, insert, draw, etc. These used to be called menus, but they are now called a tab. So if I click on various tabs, I will see the screen change on the top. So if I click on the data tab, or then I click on the home tab, I get a bunch of different options listed below. This changing screen below is called the ribbon. And on each ribbon, there are certain groups of information of icons grouped together, and those icons grouped together are similar in what they are doing. Like in this case, we have the font group made up of a bunch of icons that are used for fonts, like bold, italicize, underline, a font color, etc. And there is even this button here that I can click. It's like a square with an arrow pointing down to the southwest. If I click on that, I get even more formatting options because they couldn't all just fit in that group on the ribbon on the screen. So we will go over some of these more commonly used formatting options in a future lesson. So for now, I'm just going to click cancel. So in summary, I just want you to know that we have groups of icons that are living on a ribbon that are accessed by clicking on different tabs in Excel. Okay, so getting around in Excel. I don't want you to feel like you're lost when you're inside your Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to give you some ways to navigate all the way around. First, you could take your mouse and you could click into any cell. And that's one way to do it, but it's not the most efficient way. If I'm in a cell A1 and I hit the Enter key, I will automatically move down to the cell A2. Likewise, if I hit Tab, I will move to the right. I can also use the up arrow key, the down arrow key, the right arrow key, and the left arrow key to move throughout my Excel spreadsheet. I can also go up to this number here and I can type Q12, and that will bring me to that cell. Also, if I hit Control right, I will go all the way to the right of the spreadsheet till the very, very end, in case you wanted to see what that end looked like. Also, if I hit Control and the down arrow key, I will go to the very bottom corner, right-hand corner of my spreadsheet. If I hit Control and I hit the left, I will still be at the final row. And if I hit Control and I hit the up button, I will return to A1. So if I want to move around in a square, I can use Control and my arrow keys to the right, down, to the left, and back up. Sometimes the ribbon becomes a little too big for the space that you want to work with. You can shrink the ribbon by clicking this up arrow right here. But sometimes after not having the ribbon for a while, you'd like to have it back. So you can just click on any of these tabs up here and go over here to this pin button, and the ribbon will stay back in place on the screen like it was before. One more thing I would like to show you is sometimes the mouse changes. The default of the mouse is a white filled in cross. However, if I click on a cell, the mouse will change. If I go to the top left corner, it will change to arrows in all places. This allows you to move a cell. We will cover that later. If I move to the bottom right, it will be a small thin cross, which will allow me to autofill cells, which I will also go over later. If you go up to here, you will see an arrow that points to the right and the left on the cross, and that allows you to change the width of a column. And same thing on a row, you will see up and down arrows, and that allows me to make the rows smaller or larger. Now it's time to learn about entering data. Now that we have some spreadsheet lingo down, and we know how to get around our spreadsheet, let's finally create our own. Usually, most people like to put a title at the very top of their spreadsheet. I thought that maybe we could do monthly budget and keep track of some of our home expenditures. Next, I need to think about what categories of information do I want to keep track of. I would say maybe the date, the purchase, the category, and finally, how much it cost. So let's say on February 1st, I went out and I purchased an oil change. That category would be under my car, and let's say the cost of that was $35. And let's put another one in on February 2nd. I went to the grocery store. This is a food category, and I spent $125, and so on. And you can start entering that information yourself. If you are following along with me and you would like to enter some of your own data, just hit the pause key because that's what I'm going to be doing. Okay, so I finished entering more data. I hope you had a chance to as well. After I entered my data, I noticed a couple problems. First of all, I noticed that I wrote heating oil instead of heating oil. If I start typing in the cell and I type right over it, I'm going to replace what I had already put in there. I also noticed I spelled grocery wrong. If I don't feel like retyping the whole word, I have two options. I can double click in here until I get a blinking cursor, and I can move it with the arrows, or I can hit backspace. Or if I hit enter, I will keep that, but it's still spelled wrong. So if I click back on it, I can also click up here and click where I want to fix it and hit enter on the keyboard. So remember, if you want to edit a cell, if you click on it and you start typing, you're going to replace what's in there. If you've clicked on the cell and you realized, oh, I don't want to replace what's in there, simply hit the escape key on the keyboard. So if I go in there and I realize that I want to edit it, I can double click until I get that blinking cursor, or I can click up top where I have the blinking cursor again and edit it there. Pretend that I went to the grocery store a couple days later. I can highlight the cells that remain the same. So just say grocery and food. I can right click on those and go to copy. And then I can click in the cell below it and I can right click and go to paste. Or if I want to highlight that and undo it, my other option is to highlight those and hit Control C on the keyboard and then click in the cell where I'd like to put the information and put Control V. Also, I can click to the cell to the left. I'm going to want to put a date and the new amount that I spent on groceries. I'm also looking at my list right here, realizing, oh look, I forgot to put Valentine's gift that I bought for my spouse in here. I really need it to be on February 14th. I can highlight that row and right click on it and go to insert. And then here I can write 214, hit the right arrow on my keyboard, Valentine's gift. I can put that under the category of gift and say I spent $45 on that. But one more thing I would like to show you with that is you could also, if I put something in here that I bought on February 2nd and say that I went out to dinner, and that would go under the food category, and I spent $30. Now my data is out of order. But if I highlight all of my data like this, and I go up to the Data tab, and I hit A to Z, it's going to sort my date really quickly. Now for some common formulas inside Excel. Now that I have all my data entered, there's a few formulas that would be really helpful. So first of all, I'm going to click in this cell down here, and I'm going to think about, I'd like to know how much I've spent in the month of February. So if I click on this little button up here, it's called Insert Function. There's a bunch of commonly used functions on here, but I'm going to pick the sum, and then it is going to say OK. Now I'm going to be asked for a range of cells. Which cells am I summing up? If I click on D3 and I drag the mouse all the way down while holding down the left mouse button to cell 20, and then I hit OK, that will give me a sum of everything that I have spent. So it's good to label that. I'm just going to say sum for month. I also have some other options. What if I just want total car expenses? I can add some expenses together. So if I hit the equal sign on the keyboard, I can go up to my first car expense. See how it's got a dashed line around it and it's blinking? That's because Excel knows that we're entering a formula. Now if I push the plus key, and I can hit the next car expense, hit the plus key, the next car expense, hit the plus key, and the final car expense. So there's 4 cells that have car expenses in them. When I hit enter, I've added all those cells together. What if I wanted to know my average food bill? Again, I can use a function. Hit the FX up here and go to average this time instead of sum. Say OK, and it's going to ask me which cells I want. I don't want all the cells, and the cells are not right next to each other. So I can click the top one. I can keep the left mouse button down, and I can drag down because those ones are in order, but then I need to let go. Hit the control key on my keyboard, hit the next food, the next food, the next food, and the next 2 foods. And then I can hit enter, and that will give me an average of what my food bill was. If I wanted to find out how much money I have left over after I've taken out my total car costs, I could put my difference between my total and my car costs. Notice I hit the enter key when I was done typing and I went down. So I'm going to use my arrow keys to go back up to here. I could type equals the total amount and click on the total amount that I spent for the month minus the total amount that I spent on my car. And that's my remainder. That's how much I have after all of my car expenses. If I highlight this column of data right here, and I just want to quickly know how much I've spent, or say I just want to know how much I've spent for the first week, I can highlight those numbers and I can look down here quickly. And there it shows a sum. The count shows that I have 7 selected, and it will even tell me my average. And if there's other information that I think would be relevant here, I can right click and I can choose a minimum, a maximum. Say I put maximum on there. That will always show up when I highlight my cells too. So I can look at the information really quickly that way. Also, sometimes it's nice to have numbered items and see how many that you have. You know how we just said the count was 7? Sometimes it's nice to number your data. So I'm going to click on column A, then I'm going to right click and go to insert. And right here, I'm just going to start numbering 1, 2. If I highlight the 1 and the 2, and I go down to that thin little cross I had showed you before, and I hold the left mouse button down and I drag all the way down to the bottom of all my items, it will automatically number that column for me. And you can do this with months of the year. You can do this with any kind of data. If you're counting by 2s, whatever pattern Excel sees up here, so say I started with 2, 4. If I highlight at least 2 in that series, Excel will interpret and it will count everything by 2 for you. That's actually a really fun function. Say I wanted to move this total data and I wanted it to be one more cell up. We had talked before about the upper left-hand corner where I get all 4 of those arrows. So if I just hold my left mouse button down and I drag that total over somewhere else, say I want to see it at the top, I can move my data all around like that. Or if I want to move those get that double arrow back and move it back down where it was, I can relocate it that way. Now for how to do some common formatting. Now that my data entry is complete, it would be nice to format my data so that it looks a lot more presentable. I can see some problems with it right now. First of all, the monthly budget is the title. I would like to center that title across all of my data. So if I click in cell A1, hold down the left mouse button, and drag all the way over to cell E. If I right click, I can go to Format Cells. If I click on Alignment, I can merge these cells and say OK. So now those cells A1, B1, C1, D1, E1 all live in one cell. I can also center it using this button right here. Also, my titles going all the way across, I'm going to highlight all of those. To highlight multiple cells, just click on the left mouse button and drag to the right. I have some options here. I'm going to bold those and underline them so they can look like actual headers. On my monthly budget, that's really a title of my whole screen, so I would like to pick a font that really stands out. This Arial Black is a pretty good one. And let's make the font bigger. Maybe make it down to like a 20. And you see how that was too big for the cell? If I go over here in between rows 1 and 2, and I get the mouse to look like it's got an arrow going up and down, all I need to do is double click, and that will correctly size the row so that all of that font size fits. While I'm looking at that, I can also tell that my words are not fitting well into these columns. I'd like to fix that for everything, so I'm going to click in between A and 1, and I'm just going to double click between any two columns. It can be between B and C, C and D. As soon as I do that, everything will be resized correctly. Next, I would like to look at these numbers over here. They're numbers, but really they're currency. So I have a couple different options here. I can pull down this menu right here and I can go to currency, or I could click on this currency right here and it will line up the dollar signs on there. So that's just personal preference, which one you would like to do. If I wanted to make one cell a different color to cause it to stand out, like maybe this $500 for utilities, because that's a cost I should probably be looking into lowering, I can go up here to the font color, use this pull down on the right, and maybe make it red so that it stands out to the other users. Also, I can highlight all the way around my data, and I can stick in a border, and I can do that a couple of different ways. I can use it through this menu right here, and I could say that I would like a thick outside border. And when I click over here, I can see that there's a border around all of my data. If I highlight all of my data again, I can go back to there and I can go to all borders. And I now have a border around my data. But if you notice, I've lost my thick line around all of my data. If I want to bring that back, I just simply highlight it all again. I choose the border option, and I can make the thick outside border. As you can see, I'll pull that menu down again. You can see that there's lots of different options. You can have thick borders only at the bottom. You can have only borders on the left, the top, etc. I know we summed up this before, but I would like to show you another way to sum that is a little bit faster than just going to the little f of x function and typing in a lot of information. So I'm going to delete the sum that we have for there right now, and then I'm going to go to this little thing over here that's called auto sum, and I'm going to click that one button, and it is automatically going to select all the data that's above it, and I'm going to hit enter, and that's just another way to sum up data really quickly. Say my data set is a lot longer and I need to look for the word Valentine's. I can hit this find button over here, and if I hit find, I can look for Valentine. If I hit find next, it'll go directly to the cell where it has the word Valentine. The other nice thing here, say I didn't want Valentine on here. I wanted another word. Maybe I wanted to shorten it a little bit and say V-Day. If I put that in and I hit replace, it replaces all of the text right there. Here's another option that's really neat. I'm going to click on a cell outside of all of my data. I'm just going to type in the word hello. Now I'm going to look over at my data and say, you know, I really like the way this cell looks. It says the word date, it's underlined, it's got a box around it. I don't feel like hitting all those formatting keys all over again. So I'm going to click on here and I'm going to go to this little paintbrush. This is called the Format Painter. If I click on it and then I click on, see my mouse has changed, it's dragging that paintbrush with me. If I click on this cell right here, this cell is going to inherit all the same formatting as the original one before I click the Format Painter. So if I wanted it to be red, like this one, I could click on the 500, then hit the Format Painter, and then hit the cell where I want to change the format. Here's another fun tool. If I wanted to highlight all of my data, I could go to conditional formatting. And I could go to highlight cell rules. And I could say, I want to highlight every cell here that is greater than $100. And then I could select what color I would like to fill it with. The default right here was a light red fill with a dark red text. Or we could do yellow or green. Let's try the green one. So if I do green and I say OK, I've automatically highlighted all of the cells that have a number greater than 100. Now is an introduction to some of the various tabs that are available to you. In this next section, I would like to go over a few more of the useful tools on the tabs above that we have not seen yet. The first tab I would like to go to is the Insert tab. With all of our data here, it would be really nice to make it make some sense. I'm looking at cars and food and utilities. I think I would like to see how much each of those has cost me by category. I'm going to click on category and hold my left mouse button down and go over to cost and drag all the way down to the end of my data set. Then I'm going to go to insert pivot table. A pivot table is going to make my information much more useful to me. It's going to ask to select a table or a range, but since we already selected the table or range, it automatically populates it in there. I would also like to put it in my existing worksheet, and in the location, I'm going to pick where this hello cell is because we don't really need this anymore. So I'm going to select that cell, and I'm going to say OK. There's already data. Do you want to replace it? Yes. Now here's my pivot table. It's asking me two questions over here, the cost and the category. What I would like to see is the category, and I would like to see the sum of the cost. So I'm going to click and drag the cost down here. Now I have a table of very useful information. I can see how much my car has cost so far this month, my clothes, my food, my gifts, and my utilities. And I even get a nice little grand total down in the right-hand corner. Now using this pivot table that I just created, I can highlight the data and I can go to insert and I can go to a pie chart. So I'm going to select the down arrow here and go to 2D pie. And I get an instant chart built on my pivot table. I don't really have a lot of place to put it on my screen right now, so I'm going to close this window and just drag it over to the right. This little chart here gives me a visual that half my money is going somewhere and another quarter of my money is going somewhere else. So I can look at those very quickly and find out where I need to spend less money. I can also go to the Insert menu and insert an illustration. From here I can pick pictures. If I have a picture somewhere on my computer that I would like to include, I could say this device. But I can also insert a shape. If I want to put a rectangle on there, often people would like to put an arrow. So I selected the arrow, and now I'm going to make an arrow in between my pivot table and my chart. This new menu appears once I do that. I have a couple different options up here. I can make my shape outline thicker right here so that I can see my arrow a little more clearly. Going back to the Insert menu, I can also insert a few other things that I would like to show you. One interesting way to look at data is to look at something called a spark line. A spark line is a quick way to see a trend in data. So for my example here, I would like to highlight all of my data that I have for the first week of February. Then I would like to go up to line, and it will by default put in the data range for the data that I have already selected. But where would I like to see this spark line? I need to pick a cell. So I'm going to pick the cell right here, right at the end of the first week of February. If I click OK, I will see a quick little graph to see the trend in how I'm spending. This high point here corresponds with the high point I have over in my data. I'm going to slice the data from my pivot table. So I've highlighted the data in my pivot table and I hit slicer. Now I have two choices. I can see slices of this by cost or by category. I'm going to choose category and then I'm going to say OK. And now I'm going to move this little box over, and when I pick car, I only see car, and notice my chart changes as well. Or I can pick clothes, or I can pick food, and I can see just that category. One final thing I can do is click in any cell. Let's click in the $500 cell that I've been picking on for so long, and I can insert a comment about that cell. So what I would like to say is, why are we spending so much? ? And I'm just going to put that little comment there. And notice when I hit that arrow, someone could reply to me. But when I click away from that cell, it's just got this little mark at the top right corner. It's kind of like a conversation going on about that cell. I'm going to move the slicer out of the way for now. And I'm going to go to the page layout menu. We have a perfect scenario for a page layout menu because I can tell this is all not going to print very nicely on one page. I don't really know if I want the slicer categories on my printout, so I'm just going to highlight that and hit delete. And then I'm going to look at the orientation, and I think in this case I'm going to change it to landscape. Next, I would like to go to the page layout tab. I've reset my data back to having a pivot table and a chart because that's the information I really want to print. If you notice this dotted line right here, that's where one page is going to cut off and another one is going to start. I have to decide if I want all of this to fit on one page or not, but one option I have is looking at the orientation. It is set to landscape. Well, maybe I can make my margins smaller. I'm going to go with these narrowmost margins and see what happens. The dotted line moved a little bit, so that means I could probably take my chart over here and slide it in and have just enough room to print out all of my information. If I scroll down, I can see that this is the amount of page space that I have with those margins. However, if I just wanted to print this table right here and no other information, I could highlight that and I could go to print area and say set print area. Now if I go to file, print, I am only printing that data. I can exit with this little arrow, and if I go to print area and say clear print area, and then I go to file, print, I will be printing everything. If I would like to see all of these options at once, I can hit this icon right here, and I can see everything about my page, my orientation. If I want to adjust it all to fit to one page, right here, I can make everything in the spreadsheet fit to one page wide by one page tall. I can adjust my margins. I can add a header or footer. So these are a lot of options that you can use when you are getting ready to print. I can also use a theme. If I don't like the fonts or I want some other options to make it look better, if I click this down arrow on themes, I can pick something like Integral. Notice it's changing my colors and my fonts. Retrospect. I have a lot of different themes that I could add. I could also save the current theme that I have for future use. Say I liked my green and the colors that were already picked for my charts. I could save that current theme right here. All I have to do is click on it, save it as a name somewhere on my computer. Let's just put it on my desktop and call it theme for tutorial and hit save. Now if I go to themes and let's change this one, and then I'm like, oh no, I want to change that back to what I had. I could go to themes, browse for themes, go back to my desktop and pick theme for tutorial, and it will turn everything back. I'm going to click on the formula tab and just show a few formulas that are interesting. This is a pull down list for a bunch of financial ones. You have some more functions. You can go over here for engineering or statistics. You can also do mathematical and trigonometry, and you can do some lookups. But one thing I would like to show you is a logical one. There's an if statement here, and I can say that if this cell is equal to, and I want to put this in double quotes because it's text, car, then I want to write is car, or I want to write not a car. Once I say OK, it's going to put not a car in there. And if I click and drag all the way down, you will see that this changes is car for all these that say car. I'm going to delete those. And another one I can put in is date and time. I can see what day of the week a certain date field is. So this is a date field. So let's figure out what day of the week that is. And then just click OK. This is telling you that this is the third day of the week. The numbering starts on Sunday. So Sunday would be a 1, Monday would be a 2, Tuesday would be a 3. If I keep dragging and autofilling this, you will see that the date changes based on what day of the week is. So February 7th was a Sunday, February 8th was a Monday, and February 9th was another Tuesday. Back on the data tab, we can sort our data by different information. So say I want to sort here, and I want to pick the field that I want to sort by. This time I'm going to pick category, and I'm going to say OK. So everything is now sorted by category. But now, what if I want to sort everything by date and then by category? I could do that. I could also highlight all of my data, and I could sort it by the cost from largest to smallest. And then I could select this and delete that level. And everything would be sorted from most expensive to least expensive. I can also filter my data. I select my data and then hit this filter button. And I can choose to filter only by utilities. So I could deselect these boxes and say OK. And I can just see my utilities. Or I can remove that filter and see my data again just by clicking this filter button up here again. Here's another interesting thing you can do with data. I've stuck 4 names up here. And I would like to split these names into a first name and last name column. They're all separated by a space, and I can do that with this field here that's called text to columns. If I click this button after selecting my data, I'm going to pick delimited. Delimited means that my data is separated by something in common, and in this case it's a space. Then I'm going to click next, and I'm going to check the box that says space. And then I'm going to click next, and I'm going to see that it's going to be split into 2 different fields. And if I click finish, my names are now in 2 different fields. Another option on the data tab is to go here and go to remove duplicates. When I click this button, it's asking me what I want to remove. Since I'm already in column N, that's the data I would like for it to evaluate. So I'm going to click OK. And then now it's going to reduce all my data to only 1 instance of each animal. Another interesting option on the data tab is right here. You can create some validation rules. If you have a field where you only want to require a number, just click this down arrow and hit data validation. What can be allowed here is any one of these options. Let's say you can only put a whole number in here. I'm going to click on that, and then I can have some other options. My data can be between, not equal to, greater than, less than. So let's say I can only enter a number less than 100. Click OK, go to that cell, and now I'm going to try to click in 900. It's going to tell me that that is not a valid number. So now I want to retry. What happens if I put in 100? It still violates the rules. So I'm going to click retry and do 99. My rule is less than 100, not less than or equal to 100. So 99 is the maximum number I can enter in that cell. Next, I would like to go over the Review tab. You can do some spell check by clicking this button, and it's going to go through and, hey, look, it's correcting my V-day. I want to leave that way, so I'm just going to hit ignore once. And then it's going to ask if I want to check at the beginning, and I say yes, and it will tell me that my spell check is complete. Remember when we clicked on the cell for 500 and I said too expensive? And I left that as a comment on the page. Say I click somewhere else, and say I make another comment with coffee right here where it says best coffee place ever. And then I click somewhere else. If I want to see all my comments, I could just go to show comments, and it will show me all of the comments that I have available on a page. I can also create notes for a spreadsheet. I just go to notes, new note. And right here, I can say, test this sheet, please. And once I have that note is in a cell for someone else to see. But notice it's a little bit different than the commenting, because this one is only red, and the comment up here is more like a purple, and it's more of a conversation. If I want to see all the notes on a page, I can click this down arrow and go to Show All Notes, and I can also click on the note, on the cell with the note and the down arrow, and hide the note. On the View tab, there's a menu right here called Macros. Macros are a way to automate certain tasks inside of a spreadsheet. In order to access all the macros on a page, just click this down arrow. We have not created any macros in this class, but that would be a great topic for future classes. Another option on the View menu is the Grid Lines checkbox. Right now you can see all the grid lines on the spreadsheet, but if that's getting distracting, you can turn those off just by clicking this checkbox. See the grid lines disappear? You can also do that for the headings, for the columns and the rows. If I uncheck that checkbox, I no longer see A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3. And to turn those back on, you just recheck the checkbox. Another great option on the View menu is Freeze Panes. What that means is when you have a header and you're scrolling through data, the header will not move. So for example, if I highlight row 3 because I want to keep everything above row 3 static and not moving, then I can go to Freeze Panes and pick the top option, Freeze Panes. Now watch, when I scroll through my data, I still see date, purchase, category, cost. I do not lose sight of what those categories are as I'm scrolling through my data. We have covered a lot of commands in this last section. If you can't remember all of them, don't worry. That will come in time. But in the meantime, if you don't know which tab or which ribbon to go to find a certain command, you can go up to this search field right here. Let me give you an example. I can't remember which menu filter is on. I'm just going to type in filter and then select add or remove filters. Over here, I can see these down arrows were applied. If I click that, I can go to my data and see what I would like to filter by. I'm going to deselect select all and just select utilities and hit OK. Now I'm going to select that down arrow again, unselect utilities, and go to food and say OK. I can see that my filters are working. What if I wanted to make another chart out of all of my data? I could go up here and I could go to chart and I will see create chart. And once I click on that, the chart wizard will appear. You can do this with essentially any command that we have learned. Finally, let's review the File tab before we are done with our tutorial. Now there is one tab on here that is very different than the rest of the tabs, and that is this File tab. There are a lot of important functions on this File tab. The most important one right now is Save. We've been working really hard on this workbook, and usually you want to save your workbook at the very beginning of your project. But right now we are going to go to Save, and we have all of these options. You can click Browse, Desktop, and you can save this spreadsheet, Test Excel, and you can hit the Save button. And that name appears up here at the top, and you can see that your file has been saved. You can also go to File, New, and you can go down to one of the templates, or you can go to a new blank workbook. You can also go to Open to open a previous workbook. These are the pinned ones we talked about earlier, but if you need to find one that is on your drive somewhere, just hit Browse and start clicking through your folders. To print, go all the way down to Print, and you will usually see a print preview before you actually print your spreadsheet. You can tell here that there's an extra page because we put that extra validation number on there. But in order to print, just hit the Print button right here. And the final information on the File menu for this tutorial is Account. Right here, you can see your user information and what version of Microsoft Office you have been subscribing to. You can also log in and get updates from Microsoft. If you would like to stay in Excel but close the current workbook you're working on, you can go to File, Close, and that workbook will go away. Whenever you are in the File menu, we've already talked about this, but this arrow will return you to your spreadsheet. And finally, when you are done using Excel, you can hit this X in the top right corner and be done with the program.
If you like this video, then give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're really serious about advancing your Microsoft Excel and Office skills so you can stand out from the crowd and get the jobs, promotions, and pay rises that you deserve, then click up here and join our Academy online course today.